One of the reasons is that the state of natural systems never repeats. Data losses can't be corrected. Costs to collect, process, validate, or submit data to an archive for future researchers' use should be integral to the research and operations. Archives should be supported by long-term funding. Again, I'll refer back to what I said earlier. I fight every year to submit a proposal to get funding for research. And normally, I'm not funded to provide data. Scientists should endorse the publication of data to be credited and cited and encourage peer review. So what should be done? Well, we need to stick to our scientific principles. We need to improve our peer review process. And I believe that we need to expand the stakeholders' role in some way, perhaps to keep us all honest. But the other way is to give you greater confidence in what we are doing. The first caution that I would make is that you need to follow the trends of accumulated research, not the newspaper headline of this morning and the publication that's just hit the streets and still into peer review. We should also remember a little bit of common sense here. We don't have that much of an atmosphere to play around with. Every one of you flying, from coast to coast flies above almost all of that atmosphere. So there's not a heck of a lot of it that you can do to dump more material into. Another is when you consider the amount of energy and the activity of the people around the world, you can see where this continued growth of population does have an opportunity to change the atmosphere. Going back to the temperature records a little bit, there are others besides the Climate Research Unit constructing these temperature records. And here is one from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It's been maintained for a number of years. And you can see little error bars being shown on here. The big, long error bars occur in the 1880s and early on, where we're depending more and more on this proxy data that I was talking about. The shorter error bars in recent history take into account those observations that are taken by instruments. Another group putting together a temperature record is the Goddard Institute for Space Science, NASA's group. And this is a slightly different way of showing these trends, these temperature records. On the left is the annual mean shown in little dots and a black or a blue line there, and a 5-year running mean in red. But another point is, because the temperature might go down next year, or even the year after of these measurements, that does not constitute a trend. So you have to kind of hang in there, as far as climate is concerned, and watch where this is going. Don't get so excited if somebody pops up and says, geez, the temperature went down, So the chart on the right also shows some of the complexity here. There are regions of the world that are cooling during this period, and there are other regions of the world that are warming. So it's not it's very difficult to draw too many conclusions from a global mean temperature anyway. So there are a lot of other things that we need to look at. One of the most certain things that we have to look at is this very, very predictable trend of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It began about 1957 in Mauna Loa, Hawaii, and installed by an individual who was questioning what we were all reading in the textbooks, that carbon dioxide levels remain pretty much the same. So we see this gradual increase. What we see from season to season is the atmosphere breathing, uptake of carbon dioxide by plants in the summer of the growing season, and the reverse in the winter. So science policy, we've made some mistakes here. We've ignored some perceptions that models are black boxes. They're very complex. They look like black boxes. Data are inaccessible. The IPCC is biased, conflicted, pushing political agendas. These are perceptions of people, and we have not addressed those. Perceived program shortfalls, no tiger teams. We don't really have a good way of supporting people who really want to address or examine some model components or results that are being shown. Reproducibility and tentative science has been ignored. It's very, very difficult with these climate models to try to reproduce what someone else has done. And this is the complexity we have to deal with, but it's a perception that we need to address. Alternative ideas are unwelcome and held to a higher standard. When I see some of my colleagues around the world who want to attack some of these concepts, sometimes it is difficult to get published or to have a proposal approved. So I want to point out that what we have on the road to certainty, it's under construction, and it won't be certain for a long time. And why? Because really we have three different models here. We've got a model looking at how climate changes or varies. I prefer variability to change. Climate will vary based a little bit on human behavior. And this is a model, we could say, of human behavior. I don't know how to predict, 50 years from now, how we're all going to be thinking. The world economy. Well, I don't have to say anything about that after watching the previous decade. And global climate. Now, my job is to try to make it a little clearer about global climate. And I'm hoping that some of you can handle the other two. What is the solution in my view? Mr. Cohen, in the plenary session, the opening session, went ahead 50 years and kind of looked back and he said, all right, well, how did we get to where we are, in 2050? And it was kind of a nice, innovative way of looking at what we might try to do in order to reach the goals. I think that if we are going to reduce this uncertainty, build the credibility of what we are talking about, we need to have maybe one more modeling group, one more global institute for climate analysis. And this cannot be fully supported by government. It has to be supported partly from the private sector. And I've been in this for some time, and I know what will draw people together and come up with what I believe are going to be results that will feed in with other results, but it will make us feel like we are setting up those tiger teams, like we are allowing different ideas to pop into the system.